If you're questioning everything you've been taught about Islam, you're in the right video. For 30 days, I did something most Muslims won't do. I followed only the Quran. No Hadith. No interpretation. No filters. What I discovered will change how you understand Islam completely. And I'm not going to waste your time. Here's exactly what happened. On day 1, I realized something immediately. When you remove Hadith, you have to ask yourself a terrifying question. How much of what I practice is actually from the Quran, and how much am I doing because that's what I've been taught? I opened the Quran and started looking for the most basic Islamic practice. Prayer, the 5 daily prayers. Everyone does them. Everyone believes in them. So I searched for where exactly the Quran specifies 5 prayers at 5 specific times. I looked for the times. I looked for the number, and what I found shocked me. I was confused. If the foundation of my entire religious practice wasn't clearly in the Quran, what else wasn't? By day 3, I started investigating other pillars. Zakat, how much exactly? The Quran says give from your wealth. But does it specify 2.5%? I searched. The Quran doesn't give that percentage. That comes from Hadith. The Quran mentions pilgrimage, but the specific rituals, the exact steps, where do they come from? Hadith. The concept of 5 pillars itself, that's not in the Quran. That's a framework we've built on top of it. Here's what was happening. I was realizing that almost everything I considered Islamic law was built on a 2-story structure. The ground floor is the Quran. The second floor, which I lived on most of the time, is Hadith and scholarly interpretation. And here's the uncomfortable part. I'd been treating the second floor like it was equally divine, but it's not. One is God's direct word. The other is human interpretation of God's word. By the end of the first week, I was asking myself something crucial. If the Quran is complete, as it claims to be, why do we need Hadith to understand it? The Quran says about itself, there is no authority except Allah, and that this is a complete book. Complete, not mostly complete. Complete. So I asked, if it's complete, can I live by it completely? Or do I actually need external sources to make it practical? Most people won't ask this question because they've never had to. They've inherited a system where both sources are used, so the question never comes up. But once you remove one source, the question becomes impossible to ignore. Around day 10, I started seeing a pattern. The Quran is incredibly clear on principles. Don't cheat. Don't lie. Be just. Be merciful. Help the poor. Honor your parents. These aren't vague. They're explicit principles, but the implementation, the specific rituals, that's a Hadith. And we've been taught to treat Hadith as equally divine as the Quran. That's the fundamental problem. So here's what I realized. Maybe the Quran is intentionally general because it's meant to be timeless. Maybe the specifics were meant to be lived out by each generation based on their context. Maybe the framework is in the Quran, but the application is yours to figure out. But that's terrifying for people, because it means you can't just follow rules blindly. You have to think. You have to understand. You have to take responsibility. On day 15, something happened. I was looking at a Quranic principle, and it directly contradicted what I'd been taught through Hadith. Not slightly contradicted, directly contradicted it. I could spend this entire video listing which ones, but that's not the point. The point is, once you start comparing the Quran directly to Hadith-based interpretations, you realize how many contradictions exist, and you have to choose which source you actually follow. So I had to choose. Follow the Quran, or follow what I'd been taught. I couldn't do both. That's when it hit me. Most people never reach this point because they never question the foundation. They accept both sources as equally valid, so they never have to choose. But when you commit to one source only, you eventually reach a moment where you must decide, which one are you actually following? This is where the logic became unavoidable. I kept finding contradictions. And every time I did, I had to make a choice. Trust the Quran or trust the Hadith-based interpretation. I couldn't do both, so I asked myself, which source is actually reliable? Which one can I build my understanding on? And the only logical answer was the one that claims to be complete and unchanged, the Quran itself. Once I committed to that, something shifted internally. I stopped trying to reconcile conflicting sources. I stopped trying to make everything fit into a predetermined system. And here's what I discovered. The Quran is simpler than I thought. Not simple in a lazy way, simple in a profound way. The principles are clear. The application is yours to determine based on your circumstances and your conscience. On Salah, the Quran says establish Salah. The word appears dozens of times in different contexts, sometimes about standing and worship, sometimes about maintaining connection, sometimes about supporting someone. So I studied every instance and what establish actually means: to put in place, to create order, to build something. This isn't whim. This is direct engagement with the text. I'm accountable for my interpretation because I can't hide behind the scholars say so. I have to answer to the text directly. That's the difference. On wealth, the Quran says give from your wealth to those in need. I give. How much, when, to whom? The principle guides me. My conscience guides me. Do you see what happened? I went from following rules to following principles. That's completely different. Rules tell you what to do. Principles teach you how to think. And the peace that came from that shift was unexpected. I was constantly worried about whether I was doing something correctly, according to some scholar, as interpretation. I was engaging directly with the text and taking responsibility for my choices. By the fourth week, something remarkable happened. I started seeing the Quran with new eyes. Not because it had changed, because I had stopped filtering it through layers of interpretation. I read it. I understood it. I applied it. Simple. Did I make mistakes? Yes. Did I interpret something incorrectly? Probably. But here's the key. I was accountable. My mistakes were my own. I couldn't hide behind, this is what the scholars say. I had to own my understanding. And that accountability changed how I engaged with the text. I read more carefully. I thought more deeply. I wasn't just memorizing interpretations. I was wrestling with meaning. The clarity that came wasn't about having all the answers. It was about knowing that the answers I needed were in the text, and I was responsible for finding them. On day 30, I had learned 4 important things. 3 of them I expected. But the 4th one? It changed everything about how I see Islam. First, the Quran is self-sufficient for guidance. It may not answer every micro-question about ritual format, but it provides the framework for every major life decision and principle. Second, the more I removed external noise, the clearer the Quranic message became. It's not obscure. It's been obscured by layers of interpretation, by contradictory hadith, by scholarly disputes that have nothing to do with understanding the text itself. Third, following only the Quran doesn't make you arrogant, rebellious, lazy, or just following whims and desires as I'd been warned. In fact, quite the opposite. It makes you humble, because you realize how much you don't know. You realize how much more you have to think and work at it. You realize you can't just take the easy road blindly following a set template anymore. Fourth, most people assume that removing hadith means removing structure or becoming chaotic. But the opposite happened. The structure became clearer because it came directly from the source, not filtered through multiple hands and centuries of debate. And yes, most of us don't speak Arabic. We rely on translations. But here's the thing. Even in translation, the Quran is clear on its principles. You don't need Arabic to understand justice, mercy, honesty, or accountability. You don't need Arabic to read a verse about charity or family or truth-telling. What you do need is to read it directly, without someone else's interpretation already built into how you're reading it. That changes everything. That's the difference. The Quran doesn't need Hadith to be understood. It needs readers willing to engage with it directly. The question isn't whether you believe this. The question is, what would you discover if you actually tried it? My journey took over 3 years, not 30 days. But if I had to distill the key discoveries into 30 days, here's what would shift your understanding. Only the Quran. No filters. No interpretation. No one else's framework. I guarantee you'll find something that changes how you understand Islam. Muslims pray 5 times a day. Everyone knows this. But here's what nobody talks about. For the first 150 years of Islam, there's complete silence. Not a single outside observer, Christian, Jewish, anyone documented Muslims doing 5 daily prayers. 150 years? Nothing. Now, before we look at what outsiders say after all, we don't need external validation for our religious practices, right? Let's see what the earliest Islamic sources say. In Imam Malik's Al-Muwatta, the earliest Hadith compilation we have, there's a narration from Malik's own relative who knew the companions of Muhammad. And he said, "I recognize nothing nowadays of what I saw the people doing except the call to prayer." So, even the earliest Muslim scholars admitted that almost everything had changed by their time. Now, with that in mind, where did the 5 daily prayers actually come from? Now, you might be thinking, okay, but it's mentioned in the Quran somewhere, right? Let me show you what I found. I looked at every single occurrence of the word Salah in the Quran. Every single one. And here's what's weird. The meaning doesn't fit a rigid 5 times a day physical ritual. In fact, read it in context. Sometimes Salah means blessing. Sometimes it means prayer in a general spiritual sense. Sometimes it's used in contexts where the rigid 5 daily prayer interpretation just doesn't make sense. It's awkward. It doesn't fit. But traditionalists will tell you, oh, it's in there in principle. So what does that mean? The Quran says it's complete and detailed. It doesn't say complete in principle. It says we have omitted nothing. Nothing. That's not an ambiguous word. Think about it this way. If I gave you a book and said, this book contains everything you need to know about how to run a business. Nothing is omitted. It's complete and detailed. And then you read it and there's nothing about accounting, hiring, or inventory. And I tell you, well, it's complete in principle. The details are in this other book from 200 years after I died. Would you accept that? No. You'd call me out immediately. But wait, there's something even more revealing about this. Think about what was happening in the early Islamic period. Muslims were surrounded by Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians, pagans, all different religious groups. And we have tons of records from these people. Byzantine accounts, Syriac Christian writings. They were documenting Islamic practices. So here's the question nobody asks. If Muslims were visibly performing 5 daily communal prayers with bowing and prostration from day one, something completely alien and distinct from everything around them, wouldn't someone have written it down? Wouldn't at least one Christian or Jewish observer have been like, hey, these Muslims do this weird thing 5 times a day? The answer should be obvious. They would have. It would be documented. It would stand out. It's a distinctive ritual. But for 150 years, silence. Complete silence from outside observers. Until 751 CE, a Chinese soldier gets captured at the Battle of Talas. He spends years among Muslims in Iraq. And then we finally get an external account. Muslims pray 5 times a day. But even then, no details about how they do it. Just that they do it 5 times. That silence for 150 years? That's not coincidence. It suggests these prayers weren't standardized at the beginning. They developed gradually. And by the time outsiders documented them, They were already established practice. So if they're not clearly in the Quran, and they're not documented externally until 150 years later, where did the 5 daily prayers actually come from? Now, some will say, but the Prophet showed people how to pray. It was oral tradition before it was written down. Okay, let's think about that. If Muhammad was teaching specific prayers with specific times, specific movements, specific words, and thousands of people were doing this daily, publicly, in communities, why the 150-year silence from outside observers? Oral traditions don't stay invisible. They get noticed. They get recorded by outsiders, especially something as visible as communal prayer 5 times a day. And if it was truly passed down orally from the Prophet, why wasn't it standardized? Why do we see variation in practice across early Muslim communities? Why did it take until the 8th and 9th centuries, 150 to 200 years later, to finally write down the correct way to do it? That's not how reliable oral transmission works. That's how traditions evolve over time. So where did this schedule actually come from? People have often pointed to Zoroastrianism, the dominant religion of Persia, right next to the early Islamic Empire. Zoroastrianism prescribed 5 specific daily prayers called ghaz. This 5-time cycle maps perfectly onto the later standardized Islamic practice: dawn, noon, afternoon, sunset, night. The same structure, the same rhythm. The ritual washing, the prostration, the direction of prayer. Academic research shows these all have influences from surrounding traditions. But the 5 times a day cycle? That maps directly onto the Zoroastrian ghaz. Coincidence? Maybe. But when you add it to everything else, the Quranic ambiguity, the 150-year silence, the late written sources, it starts looking less like divine command and more like cultural adaptation. And here's what's telling. The only detailed records of the 5 prayers come from Islamic sources written 150 plus years after Muhammad. The same sources that include flying horses, miracles, and other legendary elements. Sources we'd normally be skeptical about. So basically, we are asked to accept the 5 daily prayers as a cornerstone, Islamic obligation based on sources from centuries later, sources that also contain fantastical elements, with zero independent verification from contemporary observers and with explicit contradiction to the Quran's own claim of completeness. Let me break down why this matters. The Quran explicitly says it's complete, not complete in some vague way. Explicitly, we have omitted nothing from the book. So either option 1, the Quran doesn't mean what it says. It's complete in principle, but actually incomplete, which means you can't trust what the Quran says about itself. Option 2, the 5 daily prayers aren't actually obligatory Quranic requirements. They're a tradition that developed later and got baked into Islamic practice, which means you've been doing something as a religious obligation that the Quran never actually required. Option 3, both things are true. The Quran claims completeness, and we need external sources to know how to practice Islam, which means the Quran is incomplete, which contradicts the Quran. Pick one. But traditionalists want to have it both ways. They want the Quran to be complete and want the later sources to be binding, and want you to accept both without questioning the logic. That's not intellectually honest. This isn't just about 5 prayers. This is about a pattern. Islamic tradition added layer upon layer of practices, interpretations, and legal rulings, all based on sources from centuries after Muhammad, while claiming these are all essential parts of Islam, all required, all divine. But if the Quran is truly complete, why do we need any of it? Why should you accept practices that are not in the text when the text explicitly claims to contain everything? The honest answer: you shouldn't. Not unless the Quran actually supports them. Which brings us back to the original question. Does the Quran actually support 5 daily prayers the way they re-practice today? And based on everything we just looked at, Textually? No. Historically? No. Logically? No. So what do you do with this? That's the real question. I'm not telling you what to believe, but I am telling you to think critically about what you're accepting and why. Ask hard questions. Don't just accept because that's how it's always been done. The Quran itself says there is no compulsion in religion. The truth stands out clear from falsehood, so seek the truth. Examine the evidence. You've been praying 5 times a day for decades, and the Quran says prayer stops immorality and wrongdoing. Has your prayer had that effect? Has your life changed? Still struggling with the same problems? If not, then you have to ask yourself, is the prayer you're performing the prayer of the Quran or something else? Here's what the Quran actually says. This is what most people get wrong. The Quran doesn't say prayer is a reset button, which wipes away all your wrongdoing. It says prayer prohibits it. That means it stops you from doing it in the first place. So if your prayers are really from the Quran, wrongdoing should become difficult for you. Not impossible, but noticeably harder. Does it? Or do you walk out and go back to doing what you were doing before? And here's the important part that almost nobody talks about. It says, indeed, prayer prohibits immorality and wrongdoing, and the remembrance of Allah is greater. The remembrance of Allah is greater. What does that actually mean? It means there's a condition. Prayer only works. It only prohibits wrongdoing when you're remembering Allah. Not just saying words, most of us don't even know what they mean. Not just standing there. Not your bowings, not your prostrations. Just going through the motions from muscle memory, but actual remembrance of Allah, actual consciousness. So here's the distinction the Quran is making. There's prayer that works, and what you are doing right now that doesn't. There's Quranic prayer, and there's something else entirely. Prayer isn't in the ritualistic movements. It's in what's happening inside you. The Quran actually warns us about this. About people who are physically present, but their mind drifts somewhere else. Heedless, just going through ritualistic motions. And then there are some. They make it a public spectacle, to be seen, to be thought of as pious. Just performance, no real remembrance. What people call prayer today, the 5-time daily ritual, isn't what the Quran calls Salah. Salah is many things. Consciousness, remembrance, a connection, upholding Quranic values, creating an ideal society. Over the centuries, scholars have relegated this wide-ranging concept into this very narrow and limited ritual. They're not the same thing wearing different clothes. They're 2 completely different things. Here are 5 things the Quran says about Salah. The 5th one will shock you. First, Salah is self-awareness. It's the moment you become aware of your actions, your choices, your impact. The Quran describes those who establish Salah as humble, because consciousness does that to you. It grounds you. Second, Salah is remembrance. It's the awareness that Allah sees everything you do. Every choice matters. Every moment is witnessed. When you're remembering Allah, wrongdoing and immorality becomes harder because you can't pretend nobody's watching. You can't rationalize away your actions. Third, Salah is a connection, not just to Allah, but to values and principles. The Quran ties Salah directly to how you treat people. Those who establish Salah turn away from wrongdoing and immorality. They're active in supporting others. They honor their agreements. They keep their promises. They pay attention to their obligations and loyalties. Fourth, Salah is upholding Quranic values in your life. The Quran describes those who establish Salah as people who walk on earth with calmness. When someone is ignorant toward them, they respond with peace, not anger. They guard their moral boundaries. They don't waste. They don't harm. They don't become arrogant. And here's the most shocking part. Salah is not a selfish ritual meant for cleaning the slate of your sins and starting anew, but rather creating an ideal society. Because Salah doesn't happen in isolation. The Quran pairs it with supporting the needy, the poor, the orphans, the wayfarers. It's about redistributing wealth, stabilizing communities, preventing social inequality. Those who establish Salah become socially responsible. They're generous when they have. They're patient when they don't. So what happens when we lose this understanding? When we reduce Salah to just a mundane ritual? We lose self-oversight. Without the awareness that Allah sees everything, wrongdoing and immorality doesn't become harder. It becomes easier to rationalize. We put in our 5 minutes of rituals at regulated intervals and then step out and go on about life as usual. It's just like checking a to-do list. We lose connection to values and principles and just make it about the ritual. There is a disconnect. We lose the upholding of Quranic values. Instead of becoming humble, calm, patient, and socially responsible, people become selfish and arrogant. I've done what I needed to do. Now it's my time. They use their prayer as a status symbol. At least I pray. At least I'm religious. Prayer becomes a gauge for piety. And let's be honest, this prayer is mostly about the reset button. Prayer will wipe my slate clean, absolve me of all my sins for today. Majority of the people wouldn't even pray today if they were told you don't get to zero the counter. So we can forget about social responsibility, generosity, support of the poor and needy, creation of a just society. And here is the uncomfortable truth. If this 5 times daily ritual was actually stopping wrongdoing and immorality like the Quran claims, look at the state of Muslim-majority countries in the world today. Look at the crime rates, the corruption, the injustice, the poverty, the violence, the inequality. Does that paint a picture of where immorality and wrongdoing is being prevented? Do they look like communities transformed by Salah? The contradiction is undeniable. So clearly, this 5-time prayer cannot be the Salah mentioned in the Quran, because it is not producing the results that the Quran promises us. How many people do you know who pray 5 times a day on the dot, and in life have no problem with lying, defrauding people, being dishonest to make a quick buck, cheating, being arrogant, lusting after money? And yet they wear their prayers proudly on their sleeves for everyone to see. And there isn't a conversation you can have where they don't forget to mention it. Oh, sorry, I will be late. I will have to stop for prayers. Oh, sorry, I was praying, so I couldn't attend the call. And I am not even going to go into the immorality side of things, but we all know what I am talking about. So the question isn't whether you're praying 5 times a day. The question is whether what you're doing is Salah, because the Quran makes a clear promise. Salah stops wrongdoing and immorality. Salah creates humility, honesty, patience, and social responsibility. Salah transforms individuals and builds just societies. If that's not happening in your life, then you're not doing Salah. You're doing something the traditional orthodoxy invented. A ritual, a habit, a reset button. The choice is yours now. You can continue with the prayer of tradition, or you can seek the Salah of the Quran. But you have to choose consciously, because one transforms you, and the other just makes you feel like you've done enough. Every Muslim is told that rituals like prayer and fasting are the best of deeds. If these acts are for God, they should benefit His creation. They should feed the poor. They should fix the world, right? But here is the problem. You can pray 50,000 times in your life and not help one single human being. The Quran demands asa nu amala, the best actions. But 30 days of fasting doesn't put bread on a neighbor's table. If our worship only serves our own souls, is it actually faith, or is it just a salvation insurance policy? A checklist for heaven? When you perform these alleged 5 daily prayers, who benefits? Does the hungry child in your city get fed? No. Does the justice system in your country become more fair? No. Does the environment get cleaner? No. You perform it for you. You do it so that your bad deeds are forgiven and your spot in Jannah is secured. It is a closed loop of self-interest that stops at the edges of your prayer mat. We have been trained to think that good deeds are things we do for God, but God is al-Ghani. He is self-sufficient. He doesn't need your hunger or your movements. People do. Traditional Islam has turned faith into a points-based transaction. We are taught that if we say a certain phrase 10 times, 1,000 sins are wiped away. If we stand in a specific row in a mosque, we get multiplied rewards. This is not spirituality. It is salvation insurance. It is a system designed for the self. Every year, millions of Muslims spend billions of dollars on Hajj and Umrah. We save for decades, giving our life savings to travel to a single city. We stay in 5-star hotels that overlook the Kaaba. We walk in circles, we throw stones, and we leave. And what's the benefit of all this? Supposedly, your record of bad deeds and sins is wiped clean. Again, another selfish ritual. Imagine if those billions were spent on building hospitals, schools, or clean water systems in the most desperate parts of the world. Instead, that wealth is locked into a ritual that serves no one but the person performing it. The person returns with a new title, Haji, but the world is exactly the same as they left it. The orphan is still an orphan. The widow is still struggling. Traditional Islam teaches that this ritual is a pillar, but what kind of pillar stands tall while the rest of humanity is falling down? It is a pillar of ego, built on the idea that traveling to a building is more important than saving a life. Now look at how we handle money. Traditional Islam has reduced the Quranic concept of giving from the surplus to a measly 2.5% calculation. It is treated exactly like taxes in the West. Muslims look for loopholes. They calculate it on their gold, but not their cars, or their savings, but not their property. They wait until the very last day, aiming for the absolute minimum. And why do they give it? Often, it's out of fear. Or even worse, they give sadaqah only when something goes wrong. If a business fails or a child gets sick, then the wallet opens. This isn't charity. It's a bribe. It is a token given to God in exchange for a favor. The focus is still on the self. I am giving this so my problems go away. The moment the stress is gone, the giving stops. This is the definition of a selfish ritual. It uses the poor as a waste bin for our sins rather than a priority for our lives. The Quran uses the phrase asanu amala, the best in action. If you look at the Quran without the lens of tradition, you see a radical call to social justice. Allah says in chapter 2, verse 177, "Righteousness is not that you turn your faces toward the east or west." He explicitly tells us that the ritual movement isn't the point. True righteousness is giving wealth, despite your love for it, to relatives, orphans, the needy, and the traveler. It is about freeing those in bondage. Asanu amala means your actions must have a tangible, positive impact on the world around you. If your good deed doesn't help anyone, is it actually good? You spend hours in a mosque thinking you are doing something good, but ignore the injustice in your own workplace. You haven't performed a good deed. You have performed a selfish ritual to soothe your own conscience. It is time to stop hiding behind pointless rituals. God does not need your hunger during Ramadan. He wants you to feel that hunger, so you are driven to end the hunger of others. He does not need you reciting his own words back to him 5 times a day. He wants you to be a person of integrity for the other 23 hours of the day. If your religion is just a series of physical motions that result in zero benefit for humanity, and the main aim of these rituals is to benefit just you, then you aren't practicing the religion of the Quran. You are practicing a religion of the ego and for your sole benefit. Look at your life. Look at your deeds. If you disappeared tomorrow, would the world miss your rituals? Or would they miss your impact? Ponder on what Asanu Amala really means. Peace.